How do they meet deadlines? Let me tell you one true story, and then I will sort of cushion it, but it is a true story. I have a pastor, senior pastor of a large church in Southern California, and he wanted people to turn in this very report right here. Because in essence, if people won't report to you, and by the way, these are bullets rather than paragraphs. It's like this is one sheet of paper. If they won't tell you where they are, what they need from you, how can you help them? How can you be a servant leader if you don't even know what they're doing, kind of thing. So he required that his staff get their reports in every, let's say Friday afternoon, I don't know exactly, but some day of the week. Every week at this time you're supposed to turn in your reports. One person just didn't do it, just wouldn't do it. And so one day he called him in, he said, Steve, on Wednesday I'd like one of two pieces of paper on my desk. Either your report or your resignation. So I hope I get your report, but if I don't, I'd like your resignation. Because unless you talk to me, I can't help you. I mean, he talked to him before. What are you going to do? Yeah, I'll get it in. You know, in other words, I'm not saying that's what you do all the time. I'm saying there are ultimate cases like that where that's an interesting story, at least, isn't it? That's a true story. First of all, different people differ in terms of some people just are so disorganized to hit a deadline, it's just beyond them almost. And you have to figure out how important is this? Are there other people dependent on it? Is it a process that as long as we're making progress in the process, we're okay? There are 100 different answers for it. But let me tell you, let me draw something for you that I was hoping to explain this morning, and we just ran out of time on it. And it's what I call the leadership star. This will be real helpful to you in addressing those issues with people. First of all, most people hate to confront people. In other words, they hate, if they have to confront someone, man, again, their stomach churns, they just hate it, they hate it, they hate it. So I say, let's move in our thinking from the word confront to the word clarify. All of a sudden, it's a lot easier to do. So you, instead of confronting this person that's showing up late, basically clarify. Now, Sam, were you aware of the fact that we're all supposed to show up at 8:30, by 8:30 in the morning with our clothes on? You know, were you aware that is when we're supposed to be here? You may have said, must have missed that part. I didn't hear that was a part of it. Well, then the clarification may do the trick, may do the deed. On the other hand, he may say, yeah, I am, but I just, you know, I actually, my children, I have 3 children in preschool, and they don't open up till 8:30, and I just can't get back here in time. Well, in that case, you may decide, you know, as long as he gets his work done, if he gets here by 9, it's okay. Now, just clarify what their boundaries are and why he can or cannot do it, or just see what you can live with and what you can't. But clarifying is important. Then, if you ever get in a position where you have to release someone, or you have to clarify something that's very serious, here's the framework that I would encourage you to use. And this should be just sort of a straight, I didn't mean to draw it as awkwardly as I had it. It wasn't intended to be that way. It's just a regular star. The star has 5 words on it: care, honest, fair, strength, and stress. It goes like this. Sam, I care far too much about you not to be honest with you. And in fairness to you, I need to clarify something. My frustration level keeps growing because you don't show up for work. And I realized maybe I've never clarified the fact that you're supposed to be here at 8 o'clock. Or the last 3 deadlines we've set, I think we're making differing assumptions here, because I get a feeling you think that these are suggestions and I'm seeing them as deadlines. These are not suggestions, these are deadlines. And in fairness to you, I need to clarify, am I making this stuff clear to you? And you may say, yeah, clear. It's clear, I just don't care. Or whatever. Then you say, if it's time for him to go, you're going to have to fire him or release him, or what I call release them to find where they fit. I say, you know, Sam, you've got tremendous strengths. And I make a list of them, you know, before he gets there. Here are the 6 strengths that you've got. Man, you've got tremendous strengths. But here's where I see under tremendous stress. I see that every time we set a deadline that you don't hit, I can see you feeling guilty about it. I can see you getting embarrassed about it. I can see your blood pressure sort of cooking up on it. I can see all that kind of stuff. I can see the stress you're under by not hitting those deadlines. And I've thought a lot about it, and based on what your strengths are, I'm going to move you from this role, which has a lot of deadlines, over to this role, which doesn't but maximize your strength. Now, you may have a small company and you just don't have any options to do that, and say, I can see the amount of stress that it puts on you to try to get deadlines, because that's just not your nature. You're an artist, you're a world-class artist, but hitting the deadlines, it's just beyond your interest, apparently. I'm going to free you today from this job that has so many deadlines on it, to free you to find where you can be an artist and not have any deadlines at all, or just very few deadlines. Because I don't want to have you have a young heart attack and be here and be so stressed by all these deadlines that we run under, that we cannot not run under, because this is the business we're in. I don't want to send you home in a body bag because you had a heart attack when you were 28 years old and try to explain that to your wife. So I'm going to free you to find where your strength fits, but it isn't here, because here we operate on deadlines. But there are 3 things that you want in any environment you ever work in. You want people to care about you and to be honest with you and to treat you fairly. Anytime any one of those components is missing, you're not a happy camper. If you think people there really don't care whether one way or the other, whether you live or die, you're not happy there. If you think that they're not being honest with you, you're not a happy camper there. And if they're not treating you fairly, if everybody else got a raise but you, or everybody else, you're the only one that got a drop in salary because of the crunch time, they're not treating you fairly, you're not happy there. So what you're trying to set up, in my mind, in a Christian environment, is a clear environment where things have been clarified, and where you treat people that you really care, you really genuinely care about people, you're honest with them, and you treat them fairly. But you know what? A lot of environments are not that way. People could care less, they're not honest with their people, and they don't treat them fairly. So just the setting up of those 3, that little triangle right there is a large way down the road. And then if you maximize stress, make weakness irrelevant, and try to minimize stress without eliminating it, you can basically, you can reassign people based on this. You can clarify things like why you're late. I say, now, Sam, if this doesn't, you know, I like to clarify, I care far too much about you not to be honest with you. In fairness to you, either you've got to correct this never hitting a deadline, or I'm going to have to release you to find someplace where you don't need so many deadlines. I just can't have you missing these deadlines. But I'm hoping, because I care a lot for you, I'm hoping that you can adjust and learn to do it, or we can be more realistic or whatever. But this framework is a proven framework for discussing these issues in a clarifying way, rather than the way that sort of just lets it go on and on and on and on, and then finally explodes and there's blood all over the floor and they're gone and you're frustrated and they say, He talked about being a Christian and he isn't and all that kind of stuff. Another thing, before you release someone, let me show you a real frequent dynamic. You hire someone. You think you have high hopes for them. And the reality is that on the first day they're there, you're still hoping they will give you, let's say, 500 units of something. $500 worth of sales, sell 500 things. You hope their production unit will be about 500 units. They're there about a day or two, and you realize they're never on their best day going to give you more than 250. By the end of the week, it's down to 100. By the end of the month, it's down to 25. By their first evaluation at 90 days, it's down to 10. Now, if you think that's dramatic, I've actually seen it be this much of a fall off, and they still don't release them. Because they don't want to see the person experience failure. They have a lot of pastors or churches have a lot of compassion for people, and they were hoping the person would be able to do this. They realized they could only do this, and they think, well, I don't want to confront them and make them feel like a failure or anything. So they keep downloading what they ask. So at the end of the 90 days, they say, well, look, could you do 10 units for us? Or I said, well, yeah, I think I can. And then when they only get 9 or something, they just say, look, it just isn't going to work. They bring them in. They say, look, this is your last day. You haven't done what we wanted. You know, you're gone. They say, what do you mean I haven't done what I want? You asked for 10 units. I gave you 11 2 weeks ago. You know what? As long as you have sort of let your expectations go to that level and they produce at that level, no matter what amount of frustration you have between 500 units and 10, this is your frustration right here. No matter what level of frustration you've got, they will feel like you absolutely are the worst person in the world, and they will resent you for the rest of your life if you release them for only doing 10 units when they're producing 9 or 10 pretty consistently. So what you have to do, and this is a hard part for a lot of Christian people to do, you have to, in my mind, you have to bring them in and with a leadership star say, you know, Sam, I care far too much about you not to be honest with you. In fairness to you, I have to go back to where we first started our discussion. You remember when we came here, we had talked about 500. Well, I couldn't do 500 units. I said, I know. That's unrealistic. But somewhere between 500 and 10, there's also a fairness to us in terms of us paying $800,000 a year or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to go back to, we're going to set again the standard of 250. I don't think I can do that. I say, well, I'm concerned that you can't either. But that's what we have to be worth the $60,000 a year we're paying you. Now, for about a month or two, this person may feel like a dismal failure. But at the end of the time, when you come in and say, Sam, we're not here. I told you I couldn't do it. I say, but you remember I told you that's what we needed to be worth $60,000 a year to our company. So I'm going to have to free you to find a place. And man, you've got a lot of strengths. They're just not in this particular area. I'm going to free you today to find where you fit, because it's obvious you don't fit here. But you're a round peg in a square hole. This is a square hole, you're a round peg. You'll find a place where you fit, but it just isn't here. This person will feel the day you release them. Well, a friend of mine says, when you call a person in to release them, that should be no surprise to them at all. In other words, you've talked about it enough to the fact that they realize it's time for me to to move on. But the instant reaction may be, today's your last day, and I have to release you today. The instant response may be anger, like, why? But then there's a sigh of relief, like, because everybody assigned above their ability to perform secretly longs to be relieved of the responsibility. Now hear me on it. Everybody who is assigned beyond their ability to perform secretly longs to be relieved of the responsibility. The problem is, if you haven't figured out, if you haven't set the line high enough or clearly enough, they don't know that they're not performing at the level they're supposed to be. So when you bring them in at 10 and you say, well, I'm going to release you today, why? You asked for 10, I gave you 10. And say, because I got so frustrated because you're not giving me 250. Well, you should have asked me for 250. I'd have given you 250. And you know what? If you release them that day, they'll resent you the rest of your life, rest of their life. But if you do it this way, they'll be frustrated for a month or so, but it will show them that that's not where they belong. And when you release them, they may be temporarily frustrated. They have to go find a job. But what you're going to find is if you use the leadership star, I've had many clients come back and say, I want to thank you. Not that I wasn't happy at the time, but I want to thank you for the way you released me, number one. Number two, I found a position that is so much better for me than this was. That, you know, and it's like you can be friends again in a sense. By the way, that's another thing. The day you release someone, I would encourage you to say, you know, I care for you as much today as the day I hired you. It isn't a personal thing, but 10 units isn't what we'd hope to do, as we can remember the conversation. Therefore, even though you're leaving, I hope we can still have lunch again, you know, sometime when you're in town. You know, I'd love to have lunch with you or something, because I like you personally. It's just that this isn't the position for you. You're a round peg in a square hole here. Now, let me give you another sort of real quick rule of thumb in hiring people. You can learn, here's the principle, you can learn more about a person in one day working with them than you can in a week of interviewing them. Because when you interview people, they'll try to present their best side to you. By the way, it's very unwise to hire someone that you haven't interviewed at least 3 times. First time they'll have their best suit of clothes, their best smile. The second time they'll have their second best suit of clothes, and by the third time they may come in cut off blue jeans and, you know, whatever. They get to feel like that third time, well, I know him, I don't have to. It's like you begin to see who the real person is the third time. But the point I was making before, whenever possible, get them to come work for you for a day before you hire them. And Cheryl and I have gotten to the point where whenever we hire anyone, it's with a 90-day provisional. This is difficult if you're asking someone to move clear across the country. You can't do that. But before you ask someone to move clear across the country, ask them to consult with your company for a day or two. Pay them 3 times what their salary is at the other place where they're working or something. But ask them to come and consult with you for a day or two. And when you get there, I'll never forget having a guy that we thought, you know, I was pretty impressed with him by what he said he did and what he said, how he said he did it. About halfway through the first day, I realized he's given me the biggest crock of baloney I have ever heard. He doesn't know his head from up, you know. And so at the end of the first day of consulting, I said, well, I think, you know, as you can see, this really isn't the kind of thing that's your cup of tea, and I'd misunderstood what your strengths were, and this isn't going to work. But I'd wasted one day instead of moving him across country or something. And then what a lot of people do, I've said many times that a personnel mistake will cost you, a lot of people, it'll cost you 3 years and 6 times their salary. In other words, if you got a $60,000 person, if you make a mistake, a personnel mistake in hiring, it'll cost you 3 years and 6 times 60, which is $360,000. Because you not only have the person, you have the person's rent, support staff, etc. The first year is who's wrong here? Is there something wrong? And I think they're doing a pretty good job, but there's something wrong. I don't know what it is yet. The second year is it me or them? You know, sort of like, you sort of get into that phase. And the third year is how do we get rid of them and how do we find their replacement? So you're 3 years into $60,000 salary plus $60,000 for assistants and offices and laptops and et cetera. So I mean, making the wrong personnel decision is a real costly error. And so anything you can do to actually work with the person, see them, how they actually do what they're doing, you're wise to do.